Yesterday, we had a day in Newcastle. I went to uni here way before time began, back in when was it? The late 70s. Wow, that was a good time. Anyhow, it was such a beautiful day, wasn't it? I got confused. I thought I was in spring, but not winter, and I woke up at an Airbnb and thought, let's go discover the city again. And we drove down into Bar Beach, and then we drove up the hill and I noticed this big silver thing. And being not of Newcastle descent, went, what in the heck is that? What are they trying to prove? And so I got to the end of where everybody, and there's a little car park, and we wandered down, and the view was magnificent yesterday. It was such a beautiful city. Both sides you could see, what had brought Newcastle to life back in steel and, coal. And then on the left is just this absolutely magnificent, beautiful ocean, green, rolling waves coming in. And as we walked, I sort of got this realisation that most things that are precious are fought for. Most things that are worth having don't get given to you on a pedestal. Usually you have to work very hard to actually hold something. And in this thing, as I did the walk, the Anzac Remembrance Walk, each one of the names on those little if you haven't done it, who has done it? Everybody must have done it. Sure. Some people have, yeah. Okay. It's a wonderful, I only did the flat bit, didn't go down the stairs because then I have to come back up. So, even if you're 60-something, you can do it. But each one of those little bits of etching in the steel a name of a person that served in the First World War. That protected our shores and joined into a kind of a fight for freedom. And as I read that Anzac Bridge, as I went across it, there were only about 5 million Australians back then in the First World War, and over 450,000 volunteered some way to make a difference to what they could to be able to protect the beautiful Australian shores, Newcastle shores. 40,000 didn't come back, 60,000 didn't come back, and 125 paid the price. They were gassed, they were imprisoned, they were displaced. And I thought of that and I thought, what a beautiful day. I'm enjoying this free walk with my eyes, my senses. It was just like, wow, this is so good. Bring on spring. Because this is winter, hey, we're doing well. But then there was this moment on the other side of my sense was some people left here and never came back. It was a fight of the life. And we do, not that I'm into wars, but it's interesting for me, sometimes we have to fight for something, we have to hold something, because it's interesting how something good often gets ruptured. And in Ephesians, we're going to spend a bit of time in this morning. It's amazing. One of the commentators said, this is like the 30,000 feet above sea level kind of look, the whole from before the beginning of time to the end of time. There's a massive brawl going on. There's a war going on. And here's the thing, that one who is the creator says, I created a beautiful world. I created human beings. I actually created them to be connected to me, firstly, connected to each other, to be able to enjoy male and female company. There was cultures, and yet in this creation story that Paul starts with, there's a cosmic connection between the world. It was always meant to be integrated and together. And yet we also know that the world as God created it got ruptured. It actually got split into parts. God and humans, you can read Genesis 1 and Paul picks this up. It was ruptured. The relationship broke. Between men and women, there was mistrust. Between siblings, there was a fight. Even in the first 3 to 4 chapters in Genesis, a fight breaks out and they kill each other. One kills the other. Between cultures, between Jews and Gentile. As Ephesians, and it's interesting, probably Paul lost his life because when he was at Ephesus, this church that he's writing to, he actually said there's neither Greek nor Jew. He's saying there's no distinction in God's mind anymore between the Jewish race and the rest of the world. All can have access to him again because of the cross. Apparently in the temple, in the Jerusalem temple, the Jews actually put an artificial wall in that says, this is God's holy place, and this is the rest. It was the rest of humanity can access the temple, access God. But they put another wall and said, Gentiles, any other nations can go to here. And then if you're Jewish, you can come to here. And then only a few people ever can access the presence of God. But interesting, Paul actually was preaching, you don't have to be Jewish first to actually access my love and to be reconnected with me. That took him all the way to Rome, and probably around 10 years of imprisonment, and then he lost his life because he actually was standing on something that was really important. He was fighting for something that said, how dare you as human beings say you're in, you're out? I don't know about you, but that's a bit of a challenge in itself. In this, there are some enemies to actually freedom. I like this little statement, the world without windows. There's a sense where I went to Sydney to give evidence in a court case a few months ago, and we went to this posh hotel because the government was paying. But it was funny, in the middle of the night there was only one little window, and I was in the middle of this about 55,000 feet building, and I live on a little acreage. I just remember waking up in the night thinking, where am I? What's going on? I couldn't see anything because it was everything was just dark as. I don't know about you, but I think without a God factor, the world does feel sometimes like a place without windows. If it's going well, it's all right, but when it's not going well, where's my hope? Where's my orientation? And I love the fact that Paul is in Ephesians is saying there is a real world, and that world is always dragging us towards darkness. There's my sinful self. There's a moment where I often am in between two kind of kingdoms. I want to be more with God, but there's part of me that actually wants to just do my own thing and do it my way. How about you? Anybody in that? Maybe I'm the only one up here that actually has this, but it's interesting. The third one is the devil. And some of us go, for a while there, the devil wasn't very popular. We just leave him out of the equation, just you and the world. But actually, Paul makes it really clear that there is an enemy who likes to rupture anything that's good. Anything that makes us feel more connected to another human being. You're like, I really hate that about that. God created that way. I want them to feel isolation. I want them to feel like their life is without windows. How about you? I wonder do you know anybody in your sphere of influence where it's tough going at the moment? This week at our Foster Church of Christ, we started a series called Freedom in Christ. And it's just interesting the amount of people we had. We only have a small church of 70 or 80, and 29 people, everybody said, oh, nobody comes out in winter, it's not going to happen. And so we started this course, and there were 29 people coming, and it was like the first night, and it was like, why are they here? Even the pastors were shocked that there were that many people. It was like, how are we going to organise small groups now? Because we're thinking 10 people might come, and there's 29. There is an ache in every human being to go, I know there has to be more to my life than just one dark thing, trying to conquer it and then going back and forward in this windowlessness. That's not even a word, probably. Ephesians 2 says this, you used to live in sin just like the rest of the world, obeying the devil, the commander of the powers in the unseen world. He is the spirit at work in the hearts of those who refuse to obey God. And here's the little statement, sin ruptures and destroys connections and love. I know, even though it sounds like God, there are people out there that refuse to obey God, but the fact is I'm still in that wrestle. There are moments when I go, It's too hard to follow God. It's too hard. I just want to be do my own thing. And so Ephesians, Paul says he's really aware of the battle that's going on, not just in the world, but in every human being's life. There's parts of me that still are untamed. I love the fact that in Paul, he reminds us that it's not just up to me to try and keep this battle going between darkness and light, but he says, I want you to know that what we just celebrated here in communion is that Christ is so for us that he is the part that will actually bring us to even more wholeness and well-being. Ephesians 1, 9 and 10 says, God has revealed to us his mysterious with regarding Christ, which is a fulfillment of his own good plan. And this is the plan. At the right time, he will bring everything together under the authority of Christ, everything in heaven and on earth. So here's Paul going right back up here and saying, yep, acknowledge that there's a war on for every human being. And there's pain between every human being. But what he's drilling down to is saying, here's the hope, that Christ isn't finished yet. There's an invitation to be able to go, he is above the universe as we know it. He is in the universe. And because of Jesus, there's a good plan. It's going to unfold. See there? God is now revealed. There's a new plan, a plan that God will bring ultimate peace. I think as I've grown up in church and as I've been a pastor, and just because you have a pastor's title doesn't mean you're any different to any other human being that you know. And it's interesting that part of it is often we get drifted as a pastor or as someone who lives as a Christian to going, I have to do it harder, stronger, and I have to hold all these things that are complex. But I love the fact that Paul reminds us that he said this, I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us. In Ephesians, here we have a couple of verses that just reminded me, as I reread the book in preparation, I went, this is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honour at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. Here's Ephesians, he's saying that the world without windows is not the ultimate truth. That God, as in Jesus, is actually saying there's much more. There's a moment here where the same power that brought Jesus back to life again is actually available to you and to me in the war against pain and disconnect. God's saying, hey, there's something more here. Verse 21, it says, now he is far above any ruler or authority or power or leader or anything else, not only in this world, but the world to come. As one old grey or no-head person, it's interesting, sometimes the enemy will give me a picture that says you don't have any power to actually make any difference at all. In our family situation, in people that are in pain, we had somebody that just rocked up recently and said, my husband is no longer here, and there's been great pain because we were doing okay, and then some mental health things came, and he decided that he wasn't going to be in this relationship anymore. Tears, pain, real pain. It does feel like the world has no windows right now, that life is suffocating us. And this is where my hope goes, because I can't build a window myself, but I can access this God that says in Ephesians that he's the one that actually is above anything else, even bullies, any even international concerns. I don't know about you, but I don't watch the news too much because it's quite depressing. But there's always somebody against somebody else. It's like this nation against this nation, this employer versus this, person that's got control. And I love the fact that when I read that again, I went, hang on, where do I put my hope? And Paul's writing this from prison, and he says, yep, this is what I want you to remind you of, that God is for you and Jesus is above every other authority. Verse 22, and God has put all things under the authority of Christ, and he has made him head over all things for the benefit of the church. In this Freedom in Christ book, they just talk about how people are following Jesus, how that's going. And it's interesting. They're saying the stats, not that I'm very good at stats, hate stats, but it says over 1 million people in the world each week are becoming Christians in this era. Doesn't feel like that in Newcastle, probably, or Foster. But I want to be reminded that God is doing his thing, and he's not satisfied with just human beings going, it's just, you just have to exist. There's no real hope. There's no windows. There's no access. There's no breath. There's no beauty that really matters. And right here, Paul's saying, writing from jail, I know this God in Jesus. I know his Spirit. And he has authority, much more authority than I have ever experienced. I wonder how Jesus' authority works out in you. I think the enemy tries to tell us we've got to do it all by ourselves, and when it doesn't work, give up. Just be mediocre Christian. Don't really believe that the power that raised Jesus from the dead is active today in Newcastle, in your house, my house, in my suburb, with my friends. What would be different if we started to act that way? I love this because it reminds me again, I'm not the centre of the world. God is at the centre. And when I invite him in, something takes place that I can't even describe. Oops. It says this, I pray that from his glorious and unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit. I think sometimes the media and others around us have told the church to shut up and just go around and just do your own thing in a corner. And I just want to go, hang on, how do we access God's unlimited resources? I think sometimes, like as a dad, sometimes if a kid says, I can do it all myself, I don't want your help, Dad, we tend to step back and wait for them to ask. And I just wonder, what have you been asking God for in the last little while that feels like it is a battle? Because then in verse 17 it says, then Christ will make his home in your hearts as you trust him, and your roots will grow into God's love and keep you strong. I want to say the invitation that Paul gives us again in this passage is, this is not you being centre and trying your best. You need to be able to keep inviting Christ into your heart so that his home is in you. I love the fact that in the Jewish tradition, the temple was the centre of their religious act between God and humans. You had to access the temple. And then in Romans and in the New Testament church, we changed it around. It goes, you're the temple. You. If you know Jesus, he's saying, I'm in you. Where heaven meets earth is you. So how do we then live if that's the case? Verse 18. And you will have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is, that you may experience the love of Christ, though it is too great to understand fully. Then you will be made complete with all the fullness of life and power that comes from God. I must admit, as I read this, there was a little bit of a rebuke going, don't put your foot off the accelerator, John. Just because life's complex, what's the invitation from Jesus for you? And the invitation is, God, I even don't feel that my house, in my inner spirit or my inner life is clean enough for you. And he says, I want to clean that up. I want to walk with you. I want to sit with you in your pain. I want you to enjoy you in your joy moments. I'm not wanting you to just be isolated and alone and decide that life is just best left with no windows. So, all that to say, these two verses that we're just going to come towards the last part. Paul says in chapter 6 and 10, after saying, there was a cosmic kind of battle going on, First World War, Second World War. This is a world war that's been going on because it's a battle for life and freedom and love. And we know, if we have any relatives, any friendships, that's pretty tough to maintain. And I just want to say, sometimes I think Aussies, because we've been at peace supposedly, we forget in the church in the West that we're in the middle of a battle. It isn't over yet. I wonder how you're going, and maybe this morning, like for me, it was a little bit of an invitation of God to go, okay, God, I surrender again to your lordship. I'm not just going to do it and hope it works. I'm not just going to muddle through and hope it, but I'm actually going to ask the power that raised Jesus from the dead, could you do that in me even though I feel unholy and unworthy? This is it, Ephesians 6:10, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. I realised even again as I prepared, there was a reminder to say, it's not my power, it's not my capacity to have a whiteboard and work out my life and get it straight and strategically good. What I can do is say to God, I can't do this without you. Matter of fact, I know unless you enter me through your Spirit again, I can't do this life as a Christian. I can't be loving enough. And the invitation for me in these couple of verses is to say, where do I get my strength? I remember again that Christ is not just a historical figure that lived a life back then, but is now, his Spirit is alive and in me. And just like those Aussies that signed up, some of them were nurses, some of them were radio technicians, some of them were just pure labourers, they all said, I want to be part of creating a freedom path. And I just want to invite you and I to say, Jesus is the head, not organisations, not all the clever things, because in there we can come back every day and say to God, I'm here again. Thank you for that your love is in me, that you're never going to leave me. I need your power to live and to bring life back. Ephesians 6:11, this second last verse says, put on all of God's armour so that you will be able to stand firm against all the strategies of the devil. You know, it might be somebody that's pushing you around in your space and you go, if only they were removed. I want to just say to you, what we need to do is stand firm, because often any kind of hate, any kind of painful people where they're busting something, the sponsor is actually the enemy. He's alive and well and hates it when human beings live close to God's love and enjoy God's love. And so the invitation is be strong in God, put on the armour and stand firm. Watch it, because when something comes to rupture your joy, Mary and I call them joy killers. You just be having a reasonable time and all of a sudden something comes and you go, the whole moment's spoiled. Like, we just give up. And now we go, whoa. Hang on. That one email, that one message shouldn't describe my whole experience right now. Going to ask God, can you take that away and let us actually be reminded that you're the one who has the power, you're the one who loves us. And I just want to get to the second last slide, because in verse 12 of chapter 6, Paul says this, for we are not fighting against flesh and blood, enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. I just want to remind you, wherever you've come to church, thanks for coming. But here's a reminder, if we're going to be about God and reclaiming the world for love and freedom, there's enemies. It's not smooth sailing. It's not a walk in Newcastle Anzac Bridge on a Saturday just enjoying the sun and going, oh, it's great. There were real people on those boards, and even Crowther, one of my ancestors somewhere, had given his life so that I could walk in freedom. And I want to just remind myself and you this morning, if we are in the middle of something where it feels like it's broken and snapped and it's not going well and it's like a house without windows, we need to pull up the blinds and ask the one who loves us, the one to be strong in is Jesus, to go. Because every time we ask him to come on board, he's already there. He lives inside us. Thought, seeing you've been sitting for a while, thank you for doing that. How about you stand if you can? 'Cause there's a little prayer here that is part of my regular prayer life. Sometimes I can't even pray and ask God, I'm not sure what's going on, I'm just a bit disorientated. And this is part of a prayer that just helps me to go, I'm your child, and I'm giving you permission, God, to do what you need to do again. And I'm not going to get you to read it out loud, but maybe you can just follow the words as I read it, because sometimes simply regaining God's power, I need to speak it out. Because if his Spirit's in me and close to me, sometimes all I need to do is actually reach out and say to him, I'm here again. Can you give me capacity to remain strong, to fight for freedom and love once more, because I feel like rolling over. It's all too much. Dear Abba Father, I give my life to you to be filled with your life. Restore this frail branch in full union with Jesus, who is the vine. Restore my full union with Christ and with you. I return myself to you, my body, soul and spirit, heart, mind and will. I return myself fully to the source of life. Let your life flow through me and flow throughout this day. In Jesus' name, amen. Please be seated. The invitation, as Paul sees it, is we're in a battle. Let's not forget that. Let's not be overwhelmed either, because the one that we are aligned with is the one who actually sustains the universe and knows our hearts and moves towards us, even when we're feeling like we don't deserve it. Communion is another reason why we do communion regularly, is to say, it's not my performance, it's my posture towards God, and we receive again the fact that he's loving, he has power. He doesn't believe that you should just suffer a dull life and then go to heaven. He says, you're on active duty right now. As we go out of this place, let's be reminded, like Paul, God, we want to make a difference. We need your Spirit. We need your power to take our body, our soul, our spirit, heart, mind and will, and we want to see your kingdom come. Thank you.